You know what we have a lot of in our world today? We have a lot of critics. We have a lot of experts. Experts who are very critical about everything. They are experts, and as experts, they know what's true. They know what's best. They know what's right and wrong, and they're going to tell you. And they don't equivocate. They don't say, experts and critics don't say, well, this might be the case, or it's possible that this is happening, or maybe he was thinking this, or maybe she meant to do that, or meant to say this, or maybe there's another. They never say maybe there's another explanation. It's like, I'm right, they're wrong. I'm correct, they're evil, or they're stupid, or they're incompetent. Or when they said that, it meant that they were a racist, a sexist, a this, or a that. These experts, these critics, these pundits, it's all, they know everything. They're always right. Nothing gets by them. And you should listen to them and follow them into the gates of hell if necessary. Okay? It's crazy. It's just crazy. Okay, so that being said, I now want to kind of segue, and I'd like you to indulge me for a moment. Years ago, when I was a kid, I found this poem called "The Owl Critic," and I was thinking about it the other day because something happened when I was, and I'll tell you about it later, about being someone who was critical of me, and I thought of this poem, and I went online to get the poem. And there's a whole following now. There's like a ton of people are into the Owl Critic, which was written, I don't know, 150 years ago. I don't know what. Anyway, look, here is, I'm gonna read it because I personally like it, and hopefully you will be interested. And then I'll talk about it a little bit more. Here we go. The Owl Critic. Who stuffed that white owl? No one spoke in the shop. The barber was busy and he couldn't stop. The customers waiting their turns were all reading the Daily, the Herald, the Post, little heeding the young man who blurted out such a blunt question. Not one raised a head or even made a suggestion. And the barber kept on shaving. Don't you see, Mr. Brown? Cried the youth with a frown. How wrong the whole thing is, how preposterous each wing is, how flattened the head is, how jammed down the neck is. In short, the whole owl, what an ignorant wreck is. I make no apology. I've learned owliology. I've passed days and nights in 100 collections and cannot be blinded to any deflections arising from unskillful fingers that fail to stuff a bird right from his beak to his tail. Mr. Brown, do take that bird down, or you'll soon be the laughingstock all over town. And the barber kept on shaving. I've studied owls and other night fowls, and I tell you what I know to be true. An owl cannot roost with his limbs so unloosed. No owl in this world ever had his claws curled, ever had his legs slanted, ever had his bill canted, ever had his neck screwed into that attitude. He can't do it, because 'tis against all bird laws. Anatomy teaches, ornithology preaches, an owl has a toe that can't turn out so. I've made the white owl my study for years, and to see such a job almost moves me to tears. Mr. Brown, I'm amazed you should be so gone crazed as to put up a bird in that posture. Absurd! To look at that owl really brings on a dizziness. The man who stuffed him don't half know his business. And the barber kept on shaving. Examine those eyes, I'm filled with surprise. Taxidermists should pass off on you such poor glass. So unnatural they seem, they'd make Audubon scream, and John Burroughs laugh to encounter such chaff. Do take that bird down, have him stuffed again, Brown. And the barber kept on shaving. With some sawdust and bark I could stuff in the dark an owl better than that. I could make an old hat look more like an owl than that horrid fowl, stuck up there so stiff like a side of coarse leather. In fact, about him there's not one natural feather. Just then, with a wink and a sly normal lurch, the owl very gravely got down from his perch, walked around and regarded his fault-finding critic, who thought he was stuffed, with a glance analytic, and then fairly hooted as if he should say, your learning's at fault this time anyway. Don't waste it again on a live bird, I pray. I'm an owl, you're another, sir critic, good day. And the barber kept on shaving. Well, I think that's a beautiful piece, and I think it really makes the point that I started out here with, and that is that these experts, you know, they may know a lot, but oftentimes they know nothing. And oftentimes their expertise and their knowledge gets infused and intertangled and intertwined with their ego and their grandiosity, and they lose sight of truth in their need to be right, in their need to be acknowledged, in their need to get attention, in their need to be an expert. And in so doing, they diminish themselves massively. Uh, we have these experts everywhere, everywhere, and we keep on listening to them, even when they humiliate themselves, like this young man in the poem. Even when they humiliate themselves and prove that they know nothing, that they're wrong, we keep on listening to them. This is a big mistake, okay? And anybody in your life, it's not just politicians, anybody in your life, if they tell you stuff and you find out that they're wrong, then that makes them an unreliable whatever, an unreliable expert, an unreliable witness, an unreliable person, a source to go to for advice or guidance. Okay, we need to be discriminating. When you recognize that somebody is seriously flawed, and judgmental and critical, and they come at you with this sense of like certainty, you need to neutralize what they're telling you. You can't take it at face value. If you want to trust, okay, but verify. Get other data. Get other sources. Again, I assure you. I encourage you. If you're just watching MSNBC, if you're just watching CNN, if you're just watching Fox News, if you're just watching Breitbart, then you are living in a box, a bubble. You're making a mistake. You need to look at everything and then come to your own conclusions. So just to kind of bring this full circle, just because this hit me, I have a unique story now. Most of you, I'm sure, have no idea. But I went to medical school, and I was very conflicted. I actually wanted to do stuff like this. I wanted to do talk shows, and I wanted to do social commentary. I wanted to do comedy. I wanted to be an actor, a performer, a writer, and I was very conflicted. I didn't have the guts to go into showbiz. Or it was too scary. It was too uncertain for me, and so I played it safe. I had the talent, I had the intellect, I had the grades, the ability to go to medical school and become a doctor. And so I sublimated. I pushed down that other creative hat, that side of me, and went to medical school. But when I started my internship, my residency in psychiatry. After 6 months, this desire to be a writer and a performer was so overpowering. It caused tremendous conflict and anxiety in me, being torn in these two directions and having my whole life in the balance. And so after 6 months, I quit the residency. I quit medicine, and I went off on an 18-year odyssey of creative exploration, self-exploration, and creative expression. And I came to Los Angeles, and I wrote screenplays. I did stand-up comedy. I did acting. I was on the Roseanne show in the '90s for 4 episodes. Bit part in a movie. Optioned a bunch of scripts. Never sold anything. It was a rough journey, but an incredibly exciting journey. And I did a cable access show for 6 years, which was incredibly exciting and wonderful. It was a wonderful life experience. Very grateful to myself for having done it. But after 18 years of struggling and having some minor successes, but nothing major, and struggling with a wife and a daughter, an infant daughter, I didn't want to do it anymore. I had done what I wanted to do. Basically, even though I wasn't a superstar, I had expressed myself in a lot of wonderful ways, and so I went back to medicine, and back to psychiatry, and this time around, I loved it. I wasn't conflicted. I had purged all of that energy. I had done it. I had tackled all these different things I had tried to do, I wanted to do, and I was quite content to leave that behind, and engage in psychiatry and and I've loved it, and I do love it. I'm still doing it, and and here I am being a performer of sorts, doing my little videos, and it's great. I'm very happy. However, I still have I still have the desire to, I've loved movies. I'd love to write a screenplay that got produced and see my work out there on the big screen. It would be great. And so last year I dusted off one of these screenplays from like 40 years ago, and started rewriting it and reworking it. And one of the characters in the screenplay, we write about what we know about. So one of the characters in the screenplay was me, based on me, based on a guy who went to medical school to become a doctor, but was conflicted and really wanted to be an actor. Okay, so when you write a screenplay and you want to get coverage, you want to get some feedback on it, there's a whole bunch of script readers and who will, you pay them, and they'll analyze your script and tell you what they think is good or bad about it, what makes sense or not. They're experts. You see where I'm going? They're experts, and they're critics. Anyway, so I got this one coverage of this script, and she says, she goes, the fact that this character, became a doctor but really wanted to be an actor, that's nuts. That would never happen. That would never happen. This is the expert and the critic telling me, the guy who did it, that no one would ever do that. So yeah. So my point to you is, when you put your work out there, you easily will come across people who will decimate it, who will need to destroy it, no matter how good, bad, or ugly it may be. And so keep in mind, that it's just one opinion. And it's not necessarily the truth. It's not necessarily the consensus of opinions. So don't let someone who comes in and says, that's not nuts, that would never happen, you're all wrong, that's ridiculous, take it with a grain of salt. Again, you can trust but verify. Don't take one person's criticism as the answer to your question, or don't let it break you down and cause you to give up. Rejection and criticism is part of success and growth and winning. And so you got to be careful when you put your work out there to other people who are going to be very critical. Do not let it discourage you. Have faith in yourself and go forward. All right.